Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Chit Chat. Chit Chat is our talk series here at the Figo where we speak to amazing women and their experiences. Of course, the work they do as well. I'm River, your host for today, and as you can see, we have a very special guest whom you may recognize from the Netflix series Mind Your Manners. She is none other than host, author, and etiquette expert Sara Jane Ho. Hi, Sarah. It's such an honor to have you here today.
Thank you, River, for having me. I was just in KL and it left such an amazing impression. And I'm just so happy to be on this podcast with you.
Welcome. Well, would you like to give us a brief introduction of yourself before we begin?
I am an etiquette expert. I am the host of the Daytime Emmy nominated Mind Your Manners on Netflix and the author of a book by the same name.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, this is Sara Jane Ho's book, Mind Your Manners. Um, Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I do have a burning question for you, Sarah Jane, about table manners. So, as someone who is left-handed, how do I actually approach cutleries? Because they're usually laid out for right-handed people.
Yeah, that is such a great question. And the co-founder of my etiquette school, my business partner, Rebecca, she was left-handed. It would forever confuse our students. Unfortunately, if you're left-handed, the cutlery is not going to be especially laid out for you. You just have to, when you pick it up, swap hands.
Okay, so just pick it up and just swap the cutleries. Got it. Okay. So the reason I'm talking about table manners is because before I watched your show, the only form of etiquette that I knew was table manners. And I was very intrigued when I was watching your show because it involved so many other aspects of our life. And it had me tearing up too. So I was wondering, was it an emotional experience for you? And what are some of your favorite memories from the show?
Yeah, your initial conception of etiquette is actually what a lot of people think. They think it's just a knife and fork. And when people sign up for my etiquette course, they sign up in the name of etiquette, but actually they're coming for so much more. And
Mm,
every person has their own journey. They have their own story, their own hopes, fears, desires. And they bring that when they come to my school, when they step through that door. And I
mm,
welcome it. I create a safe place for them to share that. It just, I mean, for me, teaching takes a lot out of me in terms of energy, emotion, because I give so much to my students. And
mm.
the show, I mean, the show is, it's a reality show. It's representative of how I teach. And if anything, it was more condensed. So it was really
Yeah.
intense. And absolutely, it was, we laughed, we cried, we were provoked, we were inspired. And that's why I just enjoy making the show so much.
That's so nice that you give your heart. Like I can tell that you really put yourself into it, even though it was condensed and it was a reality show, they cut a lot of stuff, but you can tell like all your heart goes into it. And I'm sure it warmed many hearts across the globe too. So today let's lay the groundwork on etiquette. For everyone who might be a little lost, what is etiquette to you and how does it apply to our everyday life?
Yeah. Well, to me, I also, okay, so firstly, here's what it is not. Uh, it's not ethics.
Mm,
There's a difference between etiquette and ethics. I'm not here trying to be holier than thou and tell you how to be a good person. What kind of person you want to be and what kind of life you want to lead is entirely up to you. What I am giving you by giving you etiquette are the tools. It's a skill set and toolkit to get to where you want in life, to make the friends you want, to go approach the customers that you want for your career, to form the meaningful relationships that you want to form in your life. So
mm,
I do want to make a difference between etiquette and ethics. Now, some people come up to me and they say, "Oh, Sarah Jane, I have to confess, I have such bad etiquette because I'm too honest." What? Well, that when somebody says that, it means that they don't entirely understand the meaning of etiquette. A lot of people think, oh, if etiquette is means that it's superficial and I'm lying and I can't say what I think and I can't do what I really want to do. Not at
Mm,
all. Etiquette is enabling, it's empowering. It allows you to, in a cocktail room, identify an important person that you want to speak to or you want to approach and give you that toolkit that will give you the confidence to go up to them and break the ice, introduce yourself, make conversation. It'll also give you the sensitivity to know when to bow out of that conversation with that important person instead of hanging on to them, right? Like
mm,
not letting them go for the entirety of the cocktail. So it'll let you know when to bow out, when to end the conversation, how to end it gracefully, how to end it in such a way that that important person will want to see you again and is open to giving you
mm,
that contact information and to taking yours, right? It
right.
etiquette helps you set boundaries and not do things that you don't want to do, but without offending the other person because it's all about the
Mm,
delivery and how you do it. I often
mm,
say that as an etiquette expert, I see myself as a microcultural anthropologist. Anthropology is a study of human behavior, and all of us, amongst one day, move across multiple microcultures, whether it is our family, our friends, different groups of friends, or different microcultures, even different departments at the office or different microcultures. Accounting is probably
mm,
more reserved and quiet. Advertising is more rowdy, right? And every time I meet a new group of people or I go to a new country, I'm thinking, what are the codes of conduct here? How are people behaving? How are they dressed? What's the slang they're using? What is the speed they're speaking at? What is the volume that they're speaking at? And then I'm adjusting myself ever so slightly. I'm not losing who I am, right? I'm still me, my
mm,
personality, my values, but I'm just adjusting myself ever so slightly so that so that they feel comfortable around me, which actually makes me feel comfortable around them, which leads to a sense of inclusion and belonging, which is what we really seek as human beings.
That's a lot to absorb. But
Yeah.
yeah, so speaking of absorbing, like when you mention being a microcultural anthropologist, we have to sort of navigate different situations and absorb all this new information, new sights, new scenes. Um, I think especially with travel, we have to do that a lot. What are your tips on respecting and navigating local culture, especially when you're traveling?
When I think about traveling in cultures, firstly, I often say that there is no right or wrong in etiquette.
Mm,
It's all about context. So what is correct in one culture is not necessarily correct in another culture. For example, when for example, in Western dining, especially formal dining, or even if you go to a restaurant with friends, you're supposed to
mm,
wait till everybody's course is served before you can pick up your knife and fork and start eating your own food. And in fact, Westerners will make a show of, oh, looking left, looking right, is everybody's food on the table? Okay, let's tuck in. Now,
mm,
in China, when people are served, let's say around a round table, people are served also in order of seniority. So the most important guest gets their dish first, and so on and so on. And in fact, that person, as soon as their dish is on in front of them, can pick up their chopsticks and start eating it, even if the last person is not served yet. And that's not rude. So that's just one example. So I often say, in terms of tips and tricks when you go to a new place, prepare. And whether that's asking friends, local friends, saying, how should I dress? I mean, especially if you're going to, let's say, a Muslim country, right? Or
mm,
a more conservative country. How should I dress? What are things I should be mindful of? And even let's say in places of worship, you're supposed to take your shoes off, right? That's like a sense of respect. Every time I go to a new country, I'm what I like to call in the field. It's an anthropological term for observation, really. And I'm just observing and I'm just looking. And I think you don't want to be afraid of showing that you don't know because you're a guest in this foreign
mm.
country anyway. I mean, in fact, one of my favorite anecdotes is when I had dinner with Post Malone, the
Oh,
artist, the
yeah.
singer. Everybody knows who he is. We all love his songs. And we had dinner in Hong Kong at a Chinese restaurant. And as soon as he sat down, he saw two pairs of chopsticks. Everybody had two pairs of chopsticks. It was a very fine dining Chinese establishment. And there were like 10 foreigners at the table, okay? But he was and I'm sure they all had no idea how to use these two pairs of chopsticks, but he was the one who said, oh, whoa, there are two pairs of chopsticks here. Which one should I be using? And that's when I said, well, the outside pair of chopsticks are the clean chopsticks that you only use to serve yourself from the middle. And then you switch
Mm.
over to the inside chopsticks, which are what you use to put the food from your plate to your mouth. So those are the ones that have your saliva. And I mean, I just thought like what an amazing how he showed such cultural sensitivity and such a curiosity and confidence because confident people are not afraid of letting on what they do not know.
Mm.
Instead of pretending like, oh, I know what to do, but then actually not knowing what to do. So I'd say definitely like show a curiousness. People like it when foreigners come to their country and show that they want to learn. I also say learn a few keywords, how to say please, thank you, where's the bathroom, and maybe water in that foreign language. And all
Mm.
you need are a couple of words, and people just absolutely love it.
Thanks, Sarah Jane. That's very helpful for our travelers out there. In that sense, etiquette, I love that you always say etiquette is contextual, because it sets the tone for keeping an open mind and being mindful of where you are and your surroundings. So, speaking of that, when you're looking forward to visiting a new country or city, what are the aspects of that country that you most look forward to? Is it the food, the culture, or maybe for you it's the customs and etiquette there?
For me, it's really the people. I mean, of course, I
Mm.
love food, but I'm a people person, and I often say I treat every person as a flower bud, and that through conversation, I like to let them open up. And
Mm.
that's how I learn actually about etiquette or so much about life from meeting people from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and asking them about their customs or having them share stories and anecdotes with me. And to me, like it's a wealth of knowledge. So I think the first step is really through the people, and then through the people, you experience everything else.
I agree with that. What would your best etiquette advice be for women making new friends when they're traveling?
My tip to women for making new friends, which actually can really apply to anybody, is to ask open questions. People love to talk
Mm.
about themselves. And, you can have a conversation with somebody where it's just you asking the other person questions about themselves and them just talking about themselves. And they will walk away and think, I just had such a good conversation with Sarah Jane, even though they didn't ask you a single question, because people just love to talk about themselves. So,
Yeah.
what is an open question? We often talk about open questions versus closed questions. Closed questions require one word answers or yes and no answers. Open questions require several sentences to answer. Open questions require answers that show thought, show an insight into that person's mind. For example, a closed question would be, what's your favorite food? And somebody says chocolate. Or do you like chocolate? And somebody says yes or no. Now, an open question
Mm.
would be, why do you like chocolate? Or, oh, why did you choose to visit Kuala Lumpur this trip? How have you felt about Kuala Lumpur after this trip? Like just open questions, right? So those require several sentences. And let's say if you're meeting somebody, you can say, oh, why did you choose to go into XYZ industry? What about it excites you? And when you ask open questions, you're able to form a much deeper relationship in a short amount of time, which is also what a lot of people ask me because we're all limited by time, right? Maybe you only have lunch with that person. Maybe you only have 10 minutes at a cocktail with that person, right? So how can you form as deep and meaningful of an impression in as short a time as possible? And well, that's by asking open questions, showing genuine interest, and just enjoying having fun. Being a positive person, having fun. People don't want to hang out with negative people who just complain all the time or are not forthcoming.
That's true. I think that's very great advice because being an introvert, I've been in situations where I've asked people close questions and then there's just awkward silence. So I've learned over time to ask better questions or questions that would elicit a longer response. And usually that leads to more conversation. What has been your most difficult etiquette situation that you've had to navigate? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Ooh, well, I mean, I'm often thrown into, and I actually kind of enjoy being put into completely new social situations where I'm a fish out of water.
Mm,
Because sometimes you have to be out of your depth in order to grow, right? You need to like, you can't always stay within your safety zone. And I see the world and different people as one big opportunity for exploration. So when, let's say, I'm invited to something and maybe it's like a really big event and I'm just invited on my own. Actually, I never ask like, oh, who else is coming? Is there anyone I know coming? Or like, oh, so I just kind of show up. I have no expectations and I just roll with the punches and have an absolute blast. But in terms
mm.
of difficult social situations, oh, this is really fun. I shot my Netflix show in Sydney. And I think I mentioned
Okay.
this in my new book, Mind Your Manners. This was in end of 2021. So it was in the middle of COVID. A girlfriend of mine from China, she said, oh, she said, I see you're in Sydney. My little brother's there. You totally have to meet him. Let me connect you guys. I said, sure. Because their family spends part of their time in Sydney. And he invited me to a house party that they were having at their family home. And it just so happened that I'd wrapped up shooting. So, I had a couple days off. And so I went and I had no idea how old her brother was. I had no idea like what the situation, where the house, whatever. It was a beautiful house close to the prime minister's house or something. And then I show up and there were about 25 boys who were maybe 21 years old. And at that, remember, I was like 35. I just turned 36. And so there were like dozens of these 21-year-old boys, college grads, just graduating from college. And then there were maybe like four girls who were their girlfriends, who were also like 21 years old. And they were playing beer pong and like splashing around the pool. And it was hilarious. And so I kind of just went in, rolled with the punches. I was introduced as his sister's friend and spent the whole afternoon with them playing beer pong, like, chugging back beer, everything. I really hit it off with the girls as well as the boys. And then the girls, for some reason, they were talking about the age or something. And actually, I was also curious to know like how old they were because at that point I hadn't quite figured out the ages yet. And so I also was like, oh, how old are you? And she said, oh, I'm 20. Oh, I'm like, 19. Oh, I'm 22. And they were like, how about you? And I was like, well, I'm 36. And their jaws just dropped. And some of the boys as well. Like, I mean, I think my friend's brother maybe had an idea of how old I was because his sister's was at the same age as well. And but like, and they were all like, oh my God, I'm, basically almost double their age. Uh, but it was great fun. I mean, obviously when I went in, I was a little intimidated, when you see like 25 dudes who are like acting like they're just out of college. But then I relaxed. Then I became kind of like a younger version of myself. And I think it's important to just go with the flow.
Yeah.
Like, I think that, and Trevor Noah, I heard Trevor Noah say this recently, and I really loved it. He said that when people say, oh, you have to be your most authentic self, he said that we actually have different authentic selves for different contexts.
Mm,
So we're not, when we go to office, when we go to the office, we're like our office self, and that is our authentic
yep.
self that's appropriate for that context, right? When we go clubbing, we're our clubbing authentic self, right? Which is different, but it's still authentic self. And that's important to remember.
Yeah. Think
Like the worst thing I could be was to be in that situation, but be uptight and, act like, really adult.
yeah. So basically go with the flow, have fun, just be yourself. We've mostly spoken about face-to-face etiquette so far. Let's lean into digital etiquette for a bit, because there's no way we can avoid digital communication nowadays. What are the three things that we absolutely must not do when texting?
Yeah, digital etiquette is so important. I actually have it as a subchapter at the end of every single chapter because my book is divided across 5 chapters. There's social life, dating and relationships, family, career, and food and travel. And then there are
Mm,
5 little like subchapters at the end of each one. And I would say texting do's and don'ts. depends if this is for romantic interest or for platonic, as platonic friends. But I guess some generic don'ts for texting would be, do not like send stream of consciousness messages.
Like a long.
Texting needs to be, yeah, and then like sending 10 of them, like as you think of them, like stream of consciousness.
Mm.
Texting is supposed to be succinct. Writing is supposed to be succinct. You're supposed to have thought out your words before you write them down. And that's very much the same thing with texting. Another thing is to be patient. If somebody doesn't respond to you immediately, don't follow up with question marks and where are you and how come you haven't responded yet? Like that makes you a crazy person. Even if you are a crazy person, hide that self. and sometimes people see a text, they're in the middle of a meeting or they're in the middle of something where they can't answer straight away. And so just give them that time to respond. And maybe if a day later they haven't responded yet, then just follow up with a, hey, just want to check that you received my text in, a nice and mild way. Another don't would be, well, now we have so many group chats.
Yeah.
It's important to know the etiquette around that. Like in a group chat, don't, like, if you're, let's say, responding to one person who's talking about something and they're responding back to you, don't all of a sudden have a private conversation of the two of you, but within view of everybody in the group chat. Like, take it offline. Nobody wants their messages like clogged up with like 20 messages back and forth between two people when that should be a private conversation.
Speaking of having fun, like we always work hard, play hard, right? So we'll end the session with some fun questions. Give us top 5 things that you must bring along when you travel, things that you can't live without.
Me personally, or my advice to other people?
You personally.
Oh yeah. Well, SPF 50, always. Lip balm. I use a Nux lip balm. It's the best because you don't want to have dry and chapped lips, especially when you're flying. When you're traveling, you get very dehydrated. And the last thing when you're meeting people is like you want to have chapped lips. It's just very distracting. I always have my water bottle, and it often features in any posts and stories I do. I have this like beautiful lavender water bottle. It's in the next room right now because again, I want to stay hydrated, and I also only drink warm water. It's a very Chinese traditional medicine thing.
Yes.
And I just so and you don't know when you're traveling when you'll next get warm water, right? So I always have, it's huge. That's my third thing that I bring with me. The other thing I bring is I bring my Anti-Vorta intimate wipes. They are that's Anti-Vorta is a feminine care brand that I launched this year with my co-founder Annie. And so it's feminine care, it's for your vulva, and it's formulated with traditional Chinese medicinal herbs. So it's completely clean. And we have cleansing gel, so a shower that you use in the shower. We have intimate spray in 2 different sizes. The pocket size spray is great for travel, and we have intimate wipes. And I will always have an intimate wipe. They're individually packaged for me. For example, when I'm on my cycle or even on long flights like trains and planes, when you can't shower but you want to freshen up, like I'll always have an intimate wipe with me. Well, my fifth thing is that I always have my notebook and my calendar printed out. So I like to have like meeting invites and stuff on my Google Calendar, but I'm very old school. I like to have a printout because sometimes you just see things differently, like when it's all out in front of you. And I'm forever writing down ideas and notes that I have. So I'm always traveling with a little notebook.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us. I also have a last burning question for you because you always seem so put together. So I think a lot of us are curious to know, how would you describe yourself in your most unglamorous day-to-day moment?
My most unglamorous day-to-day moments. Well, there are so many. Um, okay, so my favorite, most unglamorous day-to-day moment is when I'm leaving my chiropractor, my bone setter, because I'm often doing acupuncture, cupping, and getting my bones cracked. And usually when I show up, and I'm usually my yoga outfit and everything, and I'm like, hey, everybody. And then after he like cracks my bones and like massages me, but like in like really basically like painful pressure points, I come off the table and like I look as though I've been beaten up. Like my hair is a mess. Like sometimes it's so painful that I'm literally like sweating, and I'm all disheveled. So whenever I come off my chiropractor's table is when I'm my most unglamorous self.
Thank you for being so chill and sharing all of that with us. For the listeners, if our conversation piqued your interest today, do check out Sara Jane Ho's new book, Mind Your Manners. And for those who would like more food and travel stories, you can visit us at thefigo.com and our social media channels. Sara Jane, is there anything else you would like to share before we end our chit chat today?
Well, everybody, mind your manners.